Welcome to the Economic Growth, Development, and Higher Education Committee. I appreciate all of you being here today, and hopefully there won't be too much payback for all the questions that I've asked in previous committee meetings to extend this meeting well beyond our allotted time. So to start the meeting, I'd like to have a motion to approve the prior committee meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Do I need to acknowledge their first and seconds, their motions? You've got it. Thank you very much. I'm trying to learn my ropes here. So the action, I think what we're going to do is start with Wayne.
You do have to call a vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the prior meeting? Say aye. And abstain? Thank you. Any noes? Thank you. Approved. So moving right forward, Wayne, would you like to begin?
Yeah, we just got a few quick items here. In the agenda, there's a resolution to appoint a member to the Climate Smart Task Force. I'd like to refer that to the Environmental Concerns Committee, but we feel that this is an important addition given our relationship with AGFTC and the Unified Work Program, non-attainment area classifications, and so it fits. So I'd like to make that recommendation. We were going to put it through here, but I think Supervisor Freeman rightfully and correctly asked it to be pushed to the Environmental Concerns Committee.
It's the pleasure of the committee. Any comments?
I would appreciate that being referred over to the Environmental Concerns Committee.
Do we need to vote on that, or is
Certainly.
it just without any objection? We'll move that to the Environmental Concerns Committee.
All right.
Supervisor Bramer.
The other two items do not require committee action, but I'd ask Sarah to talk about where we're going, especially after an email that came in last night on the census outreach effort.
Okay, so as you remember at the board meeting last week, we passed $25,000 to get started on census outreach funding. The state has had a quite disorganized and late effort in regards to Census 2020. I believe somebody on Wayne's listserv made the comment that the state's only had 9 years to get ready for this, and they're trying to cram it all into, you know, the 1 month before the census, which has been frustrating from a planning perspective. I think Ryan had a conversation with the person at the state who's leading this outreach plan, who indicated that the guidelines would be released yesterday. They were not. Somebody who attended a seminar in New York City, he's on a nonprofit Census 2020 outreach organization, sent an email out summarizing what was stated at the conference yesterday in New York City. They will be repeating this conference in Albany next week, and we're planning to attend. Chris and Amanda and I are planning to attend that conference, hopefully get some more details. But he sent out a summarizing email of what happened yesterday. Basically, what they're doing is they're pushing off any grant award until March 10th, which I think is completely ridiculous because the census will have already started mailing out census postcards by then. They've listed the funding for the most part is what we expect it to cover: outreach, literature, informational sessions, special events, and mobilization. They're suggesting that all payments go through a nonprofit, which in our case will be Southern Adirondack Library System, so I think we're still okay with that plan. The only other thing, aside from the timeline, which is extremely ridiculous in my mind, is it says that digital media is going to be capped at 5% of the budget. Now, I'm not sure if that includes social media. I'm assuming it does, which in my mind also seems crazy. Seems like we should be spending a significant portion of our budget because that's a way to reach people fairly inexpensively, especially with the heavy use of social media. So they also will not reimburse any money expended before March 10th. Now, just keep in mind this is all via an email that came from somebody who attended the seminar. It's not officially from the state. So we will attend the seminar next week, find out more information, but that is what was relayed via this email yesterday. So my thinking after reading this morning is that we may want to consider paying ourselves for all of the, for the website design, the social media, our videos, the components of the outreach plan that are considered digital media. Again, we don't have any guidelines on what is considered digital media. And then we look to get reimbursement for for the remainder of the items. But I guess this is just open to discussion by the committee as to what we want to do at this
Mr.
point.
Moore, you have a comment?
Yeah, if I could expand on I did a little bit of this at the board meeting. I think it's maybe appropriate for a little more detail this time. The gentleman I spoke to, the Director of State Special Projects, Richard Toby, like Sarah mentioned, yesterday, the 23rd was supposed to be the day when the RFA was out. RFA stands for Request for Applications. It's a template that we would fill out and detail how we're going to spend the money. And this would eventually be turned into a grant disbursement from Empire State Development when the costs are approved. That was supposed to be a 40% immediate disbursement. So roughly a $100,000 project, we get $40,000 to $40,000 up front, so to cash to start spending. And then we would get the additional 50% upon some evidence presented that the work was being done, and then at project close we get the remaining 10%. There was an additional second process for in our case, the library, Southern Adirondack Library Association, to be qualified by the state as a pass-through entity. And Mr. Toby indicated to me that that was a good choice to be our pass-through entity, and they would probably be qualified, but no promises. He also told me that the payments, the reimbursements would be retro, that they would be good for any expenses that this county made beginning January 1st.
Yeah,
so
that is contradictory. So according to this email, again coming from Jeff White, from a nonprofit outreach organization, says applications will be approved by March 10th. So it sounds like applications have to be submitted by March 2nd. They'll be approved by March 10th. Payments will be made to counties and cities after March 10th, and partial payments of 50% shortly on or after March 10th, 40% shortly after that, and the remaining 10% based on performance by October. The state will not cover any activities undertaken prior to the approval date of their funding, nothing before March 10th.
did he indicate a new date when the RFA is going to be available?
It just says it should be available shortly. It said that we're allowed to submit questions to the state by February 14th, and questions will be answered by February 21st. Applications will be due by March 2nd.
He indicated to me that if we were to populate that thing the day it's available, that they would prioritize us so that we could get approval and have some reassurance that the money going out the door is going to come back. We can't amend the budget. The Treasurer's Office won't allow us to amend the budget to give us the expense authority until we have some kind of assurance from the state that we're going to get the money back. As you recall, right now we took the $25,000 out of contingency with the idea that it's going to go back when we can amend the budget for the state funding. I don't know where this leaves us in terms of we have the action today is for the board meeting for the end of February. If we don't have the entire program in order to be expended by that time, we're talking about a drastically scaled down program.
Right. And the issue becomes, is the county willing, given the potential return on the investment of the $25,000 that was advanced, all right, to expend that and probably not get it reimbursed based on this information, if this is indeed how they're going to carry their program. That's a decision for you people. For our perspective, the return on investment is worth it, but again, that's part of the county budget, and that's up to you.
Are you to the return on investment for the 25 or for the full 100?
I would say the 25. I think some of the items in the budget
Critical.
are kind of a continuous process that we were planning to run through the census period, like the staffing at the library, purchase of the Chromebooks, mailing of materials, follow-up. A lot of those things I feel like we could probably push past the March 10th date without too much pain, but so I do definitely want to, I feel like it's important that we start this before the postcards. People get the postcards and start chucking them in the recycling.
If we don't have it in by February 21st, you're looking at March 20th to have the expense authority. I just don't know where this leaves us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a mess.
To further build on what Ryan was talking about, the notice for the funding came out in early December. The information that we're still waiting on, the RFA, was supposed to be submitted by the end of December. They were supposed to have it to us so that it could be submitted by the end of December, and we'd be rolling right now. Again, it's been pushed back. It appears it's going to get pushed back even further. As Ryan indicated, it was supposed to be retroactive to January 1st as far as funding authority, reimbursement. We really don't know where any of that stands. And as Sarah indicated, the Association of County Planning Directors came out and had that comment that it's only taken them, they've had 9 years to get ready for this, and it's pretty bad that, here we are at the last minute and they still keep pushing it back month to month to month. At this rate, the census will be over before we even get a contract.
I think I'm sorry. I think the question in my mind right now is between February 21st and March 20th, if those are the two dates, without looking at my calendar. What expense authority do you need in addition to that $25,000, and how does this committee want to handle that?
Supervisor Bramer.
I would say, what we heard the other day, over 10 years, if we lose out on account of people, the dollar figure over that amount of time is, well, it was in the millions, right? So if we lose out on $25,000 reimbursement, I'm going to even say $100,000. I'm willing to spend all of that and not know that we're going to get reimbursed. Because otherwise we're missing out on millions of dollars over the next 10 years. Whatever authority you need now, I say just ask for it.
Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a concern, and while I appreciate the enthusiasm, my concern becomes, you had mentioned that perhaps the reimbursement prior to March 10th would not be covered under the funding, but isn't there a way to minimize, say, that $25,000 that we approved, and it was really prioritized for the board in January to take a look at that with the idea that knowing it had potential reimbursement, and certainly the rest of it would be reimbursed, but isn't there a way to minimize that cost factor going forward? Do you have to spend up to the $25,000? Are there cost-sharing efforts? Are there things the county
I definitely
can
think
contribute?
we can prioritize. So, as I mentioned, because there's an indication that the state will not will only reimburse 5% of digital media, which I feel like is a critical component, and was also among our priority items. What my suggestion would be is in the immediate needs that we did the approval for the $25,000, that we leave the website design and hosting, we leave Facebook and Instagram, but we move some of these other things down to happen later in the season. So I think we had the increased staffing for the rural libraries. I think because the census response period isn't happening until April, we can move that down to start happening after March. To start happening after March 10th. The same with the broadband increase and a number of these other things. I definitely think that we could move these to start happening after March 10th so that they'll be reimbursable. The amount that I think would be reasonable that we want to cover, which sounds like it won't be reimbursed anyway, or will be reimbursed at 5% of the cost, it comes to about $10,000. So if the board is willing to spend $10,000, not get reimbursed for it, I think we can manage pushing everything off and getting approval at the March committee.
An additional 10,000 in addition to the 25?
No, as part of the 25.
Instead of the 25. So we do 10,000 with no expectation of getting reimbursed, but we'll push all of the activities that were not reimbursable anyway into that $10,000. We won't get reimbursed for that, and then we'll push all of the reimbursable activities and get approval for that at the March committee meeting.
But to Claudia's point, I don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish. If it's going to damage the program, we shouldn't push it back.
Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you. It seems to me that we have two reports. Ryan has talked to one person at the state that says it will be reimbursable back to January. We have a report from somebody that was at a workshop last week and says that it will not be. So we have conflicting things
We're going to
in
be
front of us
attending,
here.
as I mentioned, Chris and Amanda and I are planning to attend the state workshop is being held in Albany on Tuesday. So we'll be attending that in person, and hopefully we can get a definitive answer on what the reimbursement will be and some more clarification about what constitutes digital media.
Supervisor Hogan.
What was that number you quoted yesterday, that every
For every 1% undercount, it costs the county in state aid, federal aid, about $2 million a year. So over the course of the census, that's $20 million.
every 1% we lose?
That's undercount.
$10,000.
So one,
Can we approve that?
yeah.
Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like Andrea's mathematical approach. It really looks really great in our favor, so I kind of like the idea. But I also have to remember the time that Board of Elections came in with the e-books that we were going to get reversed at, so we went forward with it, and then they came out, you know, the week before, so we're not going to get reimbursed, and then the day after we were supposed to not be reimbursed, we ended up getting reimbursed. This is a typical thing that the state does because of their organizational skills, and like I said, after you guys said after 9 years, come on, you know, we're down to the hour, so 10 grand I don't have a problem with.
Supervisor Leggett.
Mathematical. Out of a county population of, what are we at, 65,000?
5,000.
Yeah. So 1% is then 6,500?
That's 10%. 1% is 600 some odd.
Thank you with the help of that math. Okay. And so what is our chances of error of not capturing 600 large?
Well, I think when you look at the past census, and there are areas where they had a very low return rate, some parts of West Glens Falls area, the more rural communities, Stony Creek, Thurman, what else, Sarah?
Eastern portion of Glens Falls is 10.
Yeah. Those areas came in at a very poor return rate. And so the census then uses a mathematical formula to kind of project what should be there, but it's not as accurate as an actual count. So to answer your question, you know, 600 people, if we could pick that up, I think, you know, the county would benefit tremendously from that. Could we be able to do that? I think if we roll out enough positive information, you know, last census and before that, things tend to be in a vacuum, and there's a distrust of where that information goes. And I think an education program that would really help allay some fears that maybe some people have would help with the return rate.
Trust me, I'm from the government.
Yes. I'm here to help. Yes.
Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, just Wayne, you're both correct there, because I was kind of involved in the last Census Bureau in getting the hub prepared for this area where they worked out of, and I was amazed by the thicket of the contract, that what we had to do all the way down to how many loops in the carpet. And it was, I looked at it and I said, you know, it's a $500,000 build for a year project. Where's the payback, you know? But after getting through all that, then I saw what they actually did, and you know, the groups and everybody went out to these areas, and like I said, I could see how certain people would get missed, and it is scary going down some long roads there, that driveways that you know, with cross signs up or warning signs, and you know, and you have to worry about these people. So I think what we could do to help, and the state's going to reimburse. I think this, like I said, I think we should move forward.
What's the pleasure of the committee?
What are they looking for? We passed the 25,000.
Hmm?
What do we need? Do you need another resolution today, or no? You're good until March?
Well, that was going to be the question, and I was going to ask Brian that question. Since they're pushing everything back, we don't have an agreement to present to the committee at this month, but they did set aside 99,000 and some change according to the information you received initially in December. You know, if the March committee meeting is the end of the month, pretty much, right?
March 20th.
So do we want to have a resolution that comes out of this committee that authorizes the contract for the 945 or 975, and then once it's executed, we have the authority to expend funds, or do we want to wait till March?
I think what you need to do at this moment is assume that you're not going to get anything until March 20th. How much money do you need to make this program work until March 20th? The budget officer is here, the chairman of the board is here. My thought would be, tell us what you need from now till March 20th, and we amend that resolution that we passed last week to include that amount and transfer it temporarily out of contingency and roll the dice that we're going to get reimbursed by the state. But that's not fully my decision. I would want the input of the budget officer and the chairman on that.
So my preference would be that we keep our $25,000 to get started, but reorder the priority to account for what we're likely to be reimbursed for. Also knowing that anything we expend before March 1st or March 10th, we're not going to get reimbursed for, so we'll try to keep that to a minimum.
Is 25,000 enough through March 20th?
I think it's okay, yeah.
Supervisor Bramer, did you have a question, comment?
Well, I have a question and a comment. Do we need to amend our resolution that we passed with the 25,000? Because it did have attached to it the list of items. So I would be fine amending if we need to. Shoot, Amanda's not here. And someone else. I would also be okay passing a resolution through committee today saying that we authorize you to do the RFA, you know, go proceed with trying to do the contract. Enter into the contract. If that will be helpful to keep things moving along in between now and our next board meeting. Yeah.
You could also just delegate the ability to do all of this to me if you trust me to do that, so that we can be nimble. And if the board decides on February 21st that you want us to handle it that way, we can handle it that way, and we can do any budget amendments and contract approvals on my authority.
It's the pleasure of the committee.
That would seem reasonable to me.
Yeah.
That's why we have an administrator, and just kind of rock and roll.
Do we need a
you're gonna
resolution
be
for
in
this?
constant communication with these guys.
Yeah.
So.
That'll
So,
be a resolution.
The resolution is to authorize our county administrator, help me here, someone help me, to, at his discretion, authorize spending.
Any contract approvals and budget amendments and expenditures that are necessary to effectuate the census outreach program.
Up to the 99.
Up to the
whatever.
99,000.
Do we have a...
I won't be offended if you don't want to do that.
Do we have a motion?
We don't worry about your...
Supervisor Hogan, second by Supervisor McGowan. Any comments?
I just
Wayne?
have one question. On the previous resolution, it was the 25,000 in anticipation of being reimbursed. That, according to what we've heard so far, there's a good chance that almost 10,000 of that will not be reimbursed. Do we need to do anything relative to that?
No.
Okay.
Any other discussions outside of the committee? So, if I'm correct procedurally, and I know Amanda's next to me, we have a motion on the table to amend the resolution from February concerning the census. All those in favor say, if we're ready for the vote.
No, that resolution is from February, or the resolution is very back.
Okay.
This is to, what we're voting on is to authorize the county administrator to authorize contract approvals, budget amendments, expenditures up to $99,000 to effectuate this census outreach project.
So,
And that was that,
does-
Amanda, someone made that motion and second?
Yes.
Okay.
You and Mr. McGowan.
Oh, okay.
we're good.
Can we include a provision that I report back to this committee on everything that I've approved?
Yes.
Just get it done.
Supervisor Sieber?
Just with a monthly update as it's relevant, you know, the next few months so that we can keep things up.
Yeah.
Would be great.
Wayne?
The correct amount on that is $99,798.
Supervisor Bramer?
I'll amend my motion to put that exact dollar. Thanks, Amanda. And I do like the idea of the reports as often as possible because we want this to be in the public's mind and our eyes and ears and thoughts. So that when these postcards come, they don't just chuck them in the recycle.
Okay.
I'll second the amended motion.
Build
Thank
up a
you.
couple times.
So are we ready for the question? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Make one more thing?
Yes, you may.
If anybody wants to call the Deputy Director of State Operations
Oh, yeah. give us
to
that
advocate,
number.
his name is Richard Tobe, T-O-B-E. His direct phone number is 708-7572.
So, Wayne, are we done with your part of the agenda today?
Well, we did want to do a brief presentation
Right.
of the annual report.
Recognize that you
I'm-
told me 10 minutes and we're at 30 already, so I'll remember this.
Yeah, okay. What we want to do is you all have a copy of the annual report. We want to just let you have a month to digest that, and we'll talk more about it next month, but we can kind of, Sarah has a little presentation on the highlights. We can skip that to next month and move on since we did spend a lot more time on this email that we got last night on the census, so.
I think if it's the pleasure of the committee, we'll skip that till next month and give us a chance to review. I think that's a great idea. Thank you, Wayne. And Sarah? Next on the agenda, I'm going to move things around a little bit, but what I'd like to do is, Dr. Duffy from the college is here. She's mentioned that she only needed a few minutes, so we'll see how this section goes.
With her next
I've got a full-blown college here, Jimbo. I realize that these are hot off the press.
They're still shedding.
Yeah, they're still shutting. So thank you for having me, and I'm actually really excited that higher education is aligned with economic development. I invite you, this is our report to the committee that we do on an annual basis. The title is obvious, and we actually will be mailing this out if you want. We can try to help you out. But we're mailing it out to all the households. We have a pretty extensive list. You'll probably get your own personal copy at some point, but it's really, it's becoming almost a coffee table piece. It really reads like a magazine. There's incredible success stories of our alumni, our faculty, our staff, all the things that we're doing at the college, and a lot of community partnerships are outlined throughout the report. So I do hope you spend some time reviewing, and you'll see familiar faces, one being Jason Carasone, as you know, attorney is an alum, and was inducted into our Distinguished Alumni program called Trailblazers this year, so we're really proud of that. So I hope you take a few minutes to, probably more than a few minutes, to review the report, and we're certainly open to any feedback as you take the time. In the spirit of Empire State Development and grant disbursement, I just thought I would share with you that, as you recall, this body graciously fronted some money for us for the culinary program with the anticipation that you'd be paid back, and I'm happy to report that the grant disbursement agreement I signed, so that's a good step. It's been, like it is with the state, a long process, but so hopefully that money will come to you in short order as it gets processed. We've started classes on Tuesday, and our spring enrollment, we are going to meet our budget, which is really the target that we're hoping for right now. And as you may have read or if you follow the Times Union, I mean, community college enrollment is down across the nation, down across the state, and to develop new initiatives to try to new populations as well as, more importantly, keep the students that we have. So we'll talk more about that as time goes on. I did want to run through the turf field complex. If you recall, this body back in the fall approved our capital request to the state, and part of the funding in that request was to help fund the turf field complex that would be a multi-sport. That project is moving forward. It's looking really good. It actually will accommodate 3 sports, which is really incredible: soccer, lacrosse, and baseball. And so that project will kick off most likely, if everything continues to go as planned, in May, and the field will be open in October. The only downside is that we had applied through the CFA process for funding to support lighting, which is a really important element of the complex so that it can be used not only by us but the community. Section 2 is really excited to be able to have a turf field in this community, but without the lights, it does limit our ability to do that. So we were not funded through the CFA process. So right now we're kind of looking at other options to try to figure out how we can make that funding happen. Speaking of funding, the governor's budget, of course, was released this past week. As usual, the governor didn't necessarily put anything in there for community colleges. He typically doesn't. We were kind of hopeful that he would this year, but he didn't, and we used the legislature to discuss on our advocacy strategy. Also, thank you, approved a resolution to continue advocating for what we're calling the floor. In other words, maintenance of effort, don't cut us. Last year, the legislature did recognize that and gave us 98% of the year before. This year, we're asking to restore that, but to restore it to 100%, so that we at least continue to have some stability and predictability in our so we'll pick up our advocacy efforts as we always do. The good news is the floor isn't a new concept this year for the legislature, so at least they're familiar with it, and we feel pretty confident that it's going to move forward. The capital projects that were all submitted, including ours, are all in the governor's budget, so that's always a good sign. So there's some pretty, decent news on that front, but we'll keep you posted as that continues, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Moore?
Do you have any advocacy items this year in terms of the formula, or is it just the overall funding?
The funding floor, and we're asking for 100% as or a $100 increase per FTE, whichever is greatest for an institution. Other than that, no.
Okay.
And keeping it simple.
You want to just send me a couple bullet points, what you want us to include in our program, and I'll do that.
Okay, great.
Mr. McGowan? Supervisor McGowan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. How are we looking into, you said, changing for, how are we looking into bringing maybe some trades to the community college for furthering on from, like a BOCES program, which I think is just a wonderful.
So one of the significant programs that we're right now is at SUNY and the State Education Department for approval, but it's been approved through our whole process at the college, is a journeyman technical trades management degree program that would recognize the incredible amount of time that people spend in a journeyman program. We would honor that work and award 30 credits, so half for the associate degree, and then students could come and complete some business and some liberal arts courses to have a management degree, which typically a lot of people in the trades, as you know, have great skills, but also end up usually running a business of some sort, so we want to give them that extra opportunity to do that. So that's one. Our mechatronics program, our electrical tech program are all geared towards technician types of programs or careers, and we're also looking more on the what we call kind of the non-credit side to offer more shorter term credentialed, skill-based types of training programs. The challenge we have with that is there's no funding from the state, and so the cost of those programs become prohibitive to students, and they can't use financial aid for those programs. So right now we're putting together an application through the State Workforce Development Initiative Fund. The governor allocated $175 million last year, and that process is ongoing right now. And we're applying for some funding so that we can make that happen and make it affordable for students. So I think we're making good progress in trying to recognize the comprehensive nature of our economy.
Thank you very much. It's really, it makes me feel good, because I happen to be one that always worked well with my hands. And being a business owner, it's so tough to find anybody that's, you know, qualified, and you know, it seems to be a dying breed, and it's hard to find people, you know, that actually have a passion to want to do this, and if they do, how do they further their, you know, their education and achieving these goals? And I know the, you know, pipe fitters, the electric units, the journeyman process, I mean, it's like a 5-year schooling that they go to, and it's really, it's quite immense. So thank you very much.
Supervisor Bramer.
Thanks. Just on that point, I'm working on an effort to get the board over to see the 773 Training Center, because it really is like a school atmosphere, and they're working closely with the college, so it's a really exciting endeavor.
Awesome.
So I hope you'll come.
Let me know.
Okay.
I'll be there.
Supervisor McDevitt.
Ed and I have been at the training center a couple of times, and it's a great idea, Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
will certainly attend, and this is going on my coffee table. Chris, thank you.
Yeah, I know it.
Dr. Duffy, could you give us a couple of minutes on the Startup New York program? Is there anything new that's exciting happening with that?
No, in fact, I think we're coming up almost, believe it or not, on the 10-year mark in the next couple of years. So we have one approved business that is actually out of Saratoga that we've had a couple of years, and we actually are in the process of another business that might come on, and you know, we're in the confidentiality stage of the process. We don't get a lot of, you know, I think we've got a lot of conversation about it even in the media anymore, so we don't hear a lot about it. But when we get interested calls, referrals from Ed's office or whomever, we certainly will work with people and try to make it happen.
Just for the committee, I'm attracted to that because it's an entrepreneurial type program, and it's, from my perspective, it's more along the organic growth side of economic development. So it's something that I'd love to see us take advantage of if we can. So.
I think, you know, on the flip side of that, the college and the LVP, of course, have been working for years on our Startup 80K program, which really is an opportunity for local community members to learn about starting up a business. It's very inexpensive. It's a 10-week program that's been popular for a long time, and we've sparked a lot of businesses in the area. Common Roots is a graduate of Startup 80K, and Argyle Cheese Farmer, and you know, so we already have a built-in structure to help foster entrepreneurial education and get more businesses started, and we're happy to continue to work on that with the county.
Excellent. I have a lot to learn.
Okay.
Thanks. Any other questions? Dr. Duffy is earning her chance to move up on the agenda level, so she's succinct enough to keep us on schedule.
Oh, good. I passed for them.
Mr. Bartholomew in EDC. Ed, we have 10 minutes left on our planned schedule, but there's some other things we need to talk about also, so if I don't mind going over, but if we can do something in about 10 minutes, some highlights, and maybe we can go through the annual report next month.
We'll cut Wayne back next meeting.
We'll work on Wayne, for sure. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity. I echo Dr. Duffy's comments relative to the connectivity. You know, years and years ago, people just had these silos and brick walls between economic development and community colleges and education factors. Recognize the overlap and the collaboration and just the energy that can be developed among utilization, and Dr. Duffy referenced a couple of the programs where the EDC and our Local Development Corporation have been working with. As a matter of fact, just this past week we sat down with the SUNY Adirondack to looking to develop kind of a 102 course to the initial course, so that after individuals get done with a basic understanding and start developing a business plan, we really want to be able to sit down and seriously then get into the potential aspects of private financing as well as any public programs such as the startup program or so forth. So the first 10-week program is excellent. They come back in ideas, and so we want to do that a little bit more formalized and start something up that way, as well as we talked about potentially having a satellite operation in the northern part of the county. So so that there's also an opportunity for those that may not be able to transfer down to SUNY in Queensbury during the 10-week period to have something located up in North. Or I think that would be helpful, because again, combining with the various programs, I think that's important. I think we have a program that we can reach out to all corners of Warren County to do that. So that's 2 minutes of my time, Mike. So I'll
Thank you, Ed.
with here and just kind of indicate that we all recognize and appreciate what Senator Wood always wants to tell everybody. She has 1 year left, so we've got to take advantage of this 1 year left in 2020 with Senator Little going forward on a number of issues that came out in the state of the budget, still being reviewed and analyzed to get a lot of questions answered on some of these programs, starting with the Environmental Bond Act, how that's going to impact the North Country versus metropolitan New York City and Long Island area, to see that the North Country gets our equal share on that Bond Act. And that's always an issue when voters go to the polls, and they're going to want to know, what is the proration or breakdown between the Bond Act or Transportation Bond Act or other bond acts that have either gone up or down. And part of the success is due to the fact of recognizing, and the voters recognizing, that there will be fairness, equality, and sharing some of these bond acts throughout the state in the area. So that's one particular area, as well as in the economic development area, of looking at some of these programs a little closer, and I'll have an update next month's meeting on the impact of the economic development sphere as well. So what we're planning and undertaking so far this year, we have undertaken, had the opportunity to travel to the northern part of Warren County, which is not that far. Our region down here, we all know. But I had
Make the drive all the time.
Yes, right. And so do I to visit. So I had an opportunity to visit over the first couple of weeks in January some of the towns listed up there, and we'll be going back to those towns as well as the rest of the communities relative to putting together an updated brochure on what programs are available through EDC as well as through the Local Development Corporation. On the brochure, we know that in the northern part of the county particularly, the first stop is usually at the town hall, the town clerk's office, the town supervisor's office. So we want to make that information available besides our social media, is certainly to distribute that material on the doorsteps of the town halls throughout the northern part of Warren County, and all parts of Warren County. I'm just not selecting the northern part, but that'll be at the City Hall, at Glens Falls, as well as the town of Queensbury as well. We're very pleased, long-waited. I know Mayor Blaze went to bed every night with a prayer, and it was finally answered with the announcement by the governor with his work. And again, we were pleased to collaborate collectively with the Fund for Lake George, Mayor Blaze, and collectively, including the county here, to make this thing happen, as well as, again, that's further economic areas where really one of the first times, and that was mentioned by some of the individuals on the committee, principally from the city of New York and Long Island, when Eric Tsai and I testified, is the fact that this was the first time that there was an environmental group and an economic development group speaking on a particular project for the North. So we're pleased to participate in doing that. February 26th, we will be having an update Queensbury looking forward breakfast at the Queensbury Hotel. We will be having some guest speakers that will be announced next week that will deal with the economics on a statewide basis as well as on a regional basis here in our area. More information will be coming out next week. I want to go back. Please, can I give the interim report for that, John? What I want to talk about is that for the first time, we have been able to designate on a county basis the regional domestic product. In the past, there's been statewide domestic product reports, and as a result of one slide. As a result of working with the Center for Economic Growth, we've been able to piecemeal this into sectors of the state, including Warren County, over the last 5 years, from 2014 to 2018, that shows the regional domestic product growth, and that means all services and goods that were produced within the capital region. And if you can go to the page, second or the third last page there, that shows on a regional basis, the capital region was at 6% of growth over the past 5-year period. And then we're able to break that down through the CEG, and also the data came from the United States Bureau of Economic Affairs. Warren County had a growth of goods and services produced within Warren County of 8.4%. You notice Saratoga County at 13%, and the other numbers are located. So on a regional basis, the capital region for this 5-year period placed slightly behind the Mid-Hudson and New York City. So this gives us a little bit of a different barometer than what we've been able to extract in the past, which was more on a statewide basis of hunkering down into the specifics of the goods and services produced. So what are the goods and services produced, and where some of that increase came from was in the area, one, of information technology, certainly the healthcare proliferation throughout the region, and particularly in Warren County over the years. A slight uptick in manufacturing in some areas also contributed to this particular area. So as data becomes more available, this is another resource to kind of provide a measurement going forward in trying to target particular areas of growth and so forth.
Are there dollar figures along with those percentages?
Yes, there are, and I can provide that.
Okay, thank you.
In order, that would be the breakdowns of what the increase was from over the 5-year period to today. I kind of wanted to look at this from a 50,000 viewpoint without getting too much into the dollar figures, but it does come to a significant increase. And again, it's another factor that we have to look at in a positive vein. But again, we can always do better. We're always making improvements. And again, you don't take this one factor, one data to the bank, but it's a number of data. Of course, we are faced as we go forward over the next 2 or 3 years with the critical issue of workforce, development. And again, that has to be done literally beginning at a federal, state, and a regional level as well, to look to the various organizations to assist us. Programs such as what the college is instituting, programs starting at the lower levels. Queensbury School and other schools have joined in terms of more work with the BOCES program, improving curriculum so that there is a separation of those that want to go on to a 2-year, 4-year college to those that necessarily want to work with their hands, that want to get out and work. We're at such a small amount. This is the first time nationally in 50 years or more that the unemployment has been this low. Now, some will argue that in certain urban areas of the country, they are basically out of the system. So chances are, in urban areas, the unemployment is considerably higher than that. But in our region, in this area here, it's very difficult. And every day we get phone calls on asking where can we go for some help. The Department of Labor has a new Commissioner of Labor assigned to this task, but it can't happen overnight. If we're going to change the curriculum in school, at the high school level, if we change curriculum, that process has to be undertaken collaboratively with us, but it also has to be expedited through the state of New York. Otherwise, we're going to sit here in 2 years, 2.5 years, and there's no change in our curriculum. And if we don't do things like that, that provides a difficulty for us in when we're recruiting new businesses into our area, and equally important is it also may stymie our growth of existing businesses, where the majority of new jobs come from, is the retention and expansion of existing businesses to do so. So we're in discussion with a number of companies now that are saying, how can we fill these particular jobs? So, working with the workforce development, which John Wheatley serves on that board, they're developing some programs. The college is developing some programs, but we need to continue to really press that as a priority issue in New York State and in our particular region. Coupled with the other issue is how do we, over the next few years, get more people into the workforce? And that's where this regional forum that Dr. Duffy is heading on child care. If we can bring back individuals that have to stay home now because there is not affordable child care, man or woman, we're going to be able to access, even if it's just part-time work, we're going to be able to access more people back into the labor force in our particular area. And the final kind of a tripart on this is the affordable housing aspect of this thing. If we're going to do child care in the workforce, but we still need to bring and attract people into this area, maybe just down in Albany to move up in this area, they're not going to transport themselves every day without looking to move up here. We need, again, to focus in on affordable housing as that tripart issue of going forward for economic growth.
For the workforce.
In our area. Yes, absolutely. This has to be done, and we've got some great interest throughout the county, from the city to the town of Queensbury to the North Country, of wanting to move forward, and we'll be discussing that a little bit more at our 9:50 meeting with the Local Development Corporation. And I'm out of time.
Thank you, Ed. It's always a wealth of information. Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you. And just in addition to the workforce development is also, as the chairman had mentioned, about creating a whole new generation of entrepreneurs as well.
Absolutely.
You know, and starting young, and because as we see that growth in the North Country here is with firms of about up to 5 people, 5 to 12, and so it's all small building, and when we can grow that through our own creativity, that's the way to go.
And that leads into the other top issue that the chair recognized at his opening remarks in January, is broadband and cell coverage. Without that, people are not going to stay in the North Country without access. And unless that happens, that is going to be a major deterrent for business, but as well as for the young individuals or people that retire and want to do something else differently, is to have access to the broadband as well as in the education field. More and more schools requiring you to do your homework online rather than paper. So those are major issues that are facing us in Warren County, and I think collaboratively together with Warren County and with other organizations that we can attack these issues with vigor.
Any other questions from the committee or from members of the audience, supervisors? Ed, thank you so much. I appreciate it as always. There's 2 other things that weren't on the agenda, but were on my agenda to talk about today, so I'm going to try to do this very quickly. Firstly, my agenda. And I sat down with our new chairman to discuss what his goals were for me and what he expected for me and the committee to get done. And he just very casually said, well, let's just develop a new economic plan for the Warren County. And then my next question was, well, when am I supposed to get that done? And he suggested the end of the world, which allowed me to keep on, or the end of the world, right? The end of the year. It's more like it. Sorry, Freudian slip. But he said the end of the year, which is still a huge challenge. So I gave it some thought, came up with some ideas in terms of moving forward. We're going to try to develop some kind of strategy to attack this major issue. We've already sat down with Ed for a while to talk about what the EDC is doing and how we can work together and how we can gain the similar insights that we need to both get to our own strategic plans, hopefully a common strategic plan, as well as not kind of duplicate efforts, right? So I'm going to be working hard, hopefully with that, to make sure that we're doing interviews at the same time. One of the things that I do want to offer to the committee is a listening tour. Yesterday or the day before, I can't recall, it's been so crazy, but I was up at the request in support of Supervisor Hogan in North Creek to meet with the Business Alliance. We met for an hour. I had the opportunity to speak with them for probably the better share of that hour about what we're trying to do and what their thoughts were, what their needs were, what their ideas were. It was an excellent opportunity for me to understand the Johnsburg, North Creek area, and I appreciate that, Supervisor Hogan. But at the same time, I want to offer to anyone on the committee who wants to join us in these conversations. I'll do my best to make sure that you guys have some warning. I'm not sure I'm going to get much warning, but I will offer it to anyone in the committee who wants to attend, and I think it would be valuable for you guys to do that. So in addition to the listening tour, one of the things that I feel I need to understand is who are the players of economic development. We've heard from Ed, we've heard from Wayne in the planning group, we've heard from Dr. Duffy with the college, but there's so many more. There's so many more individual, locals, there's regional, there's states. Actually, when I was up in North Creek, I met the director of the Adirondack Economic Development Corporation that covers the whole park, including Saratoga and Warren County. So there's all sorts of players that I'd like to kind of get my arms around to understand where we're going, what's happening, what can we partner with, what kind of challenges we as the county might be able to help break down to help move us forward. I think finally, just to keep things short, it's going to be a big task, and I'm going to ask the committee to participate. I'll need your help to make this happen. So with that, I don't know if you guys have any questions or thought about that. If not, I'll move on to the next last-minute kind of agenda topic. In November, we had a discussion. It was brought up by Supervisor Diamond about an issue of the loss of industrial land in Glens Falls. It has to do with, I'm looking for the right words, but it is homeless housing. There's an Office of Mental Health that purchased some property in Glens Falls. It is industrial property. It will, in my mind, become tax-exempt property, which impacts economic development and our opportunity to grow in this region. So I had conversations with Nathan Hall, who's, I think, walking his way over to the podium, with our Administrator Moore. I've also spoken with Andrea Deep, who's the Executive Director of the Mental Health Association. And I thought it wise, since we do have new members of this committee, to just kind of review the request that was given to us in November that we chose to not take any action on, but to just briefly discuss that again today and see if the committee has any other thoughts. So Nathan, if you don't mind, a couple of minutes?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. I understand we're already over time, and I'll be brief with the one caveat that if anyone has any questions of me or looking for some more information now or in the future, please reach out. I believe everyone has my contact information on the letter that we provided. I know that Amanda does as well because I reached out to her. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. With regard to the letter, I believe you have that submission already regarding a certain property at 4750 Cooper Street being proposed for development of a homeless shelter. It is in Glens Falls light industrial zone. And our concern, and the reason that we're reaching out to the committee, is we feel like no one is really looking at the economic impact that this project would have, on the city and the county. The planning board has reviewed it. That is currently the subject of Article 78. That process is playing out. But the planning board doesn't really consider economic impact. I mean, they're kind of constrained by the site development characteristics, and the directives of the Glens Falls City Code, and the economic impact is not, to the community as a whole, is not really something that is before them to consider. Just to provide a few numbers to follow up on my letter, my client, Miller Mechanical, crunched some numbers, and they believe that developing that site as an industrial use would yield the property, or would yield the city and county probably about $150,000 in tax revenue every 5 years if it was developed and assessed appropriately. What's being proposed for the use right now, it's a nonprofit, so they're tax exempt. It would be another property taken off the tax rolls in the city of Glens Falls. I have 64 pages of tax rolls printed out right now, covering all the tax-exempt properties in Glens Falls already. They have proposed a pilot program of payment in lieu of tax. It's non-binding beyond 5 years, and the amount would be somewhere in the range of like $20,000 to $25,000, far less than what the city and county would be garnering if the property was used appropriately within the light industrial zone. You know, there's also the greater economic impact that Miller Mechanical is bringing to the community. Again, client has you know, talked to the people, the financial people. They estimate approximately, you know, they're bringing into the community about $1.4 million every year in the form of property taxes, you know, jobs creation, all of that, insurance, property insurance, and all the insurance with local insurance agency. You know, they want to continue to have a relationship with the community. You know, they would be interested in this parcel to expand their business and be able to continue to meet the needs that their customers are looking to have them meet. You know, in contrast with that, you know, what's being proposed is not a development that's going to create significant jobs for the city and county. It's going to be a lightly staffed residential complex for homeless and others. They wouldn't be bringing in jobs supporting the populations that's living there. It would all be farmed off-site, and you know, there's a great disparity, I think, between what's proposed and what this property should be utilized for. You know, I think the committee should know about this ahead of time. Well, you know, it's still being negotiated and you know, determined on whether that's going to be developed. You know, additionally, one final point is, you know, we have spoken to real estate professionals and realtors in the area. Not only would, you know, this property be missing out on value, but you have surrounding properties. They believe the value would go down, you know, 10 to 20% by virtue of, you know, the development of a homeless shelter in the middle of the light industrial zone. So, in the interest of keeping it brief for everyone, I've tried to summarize to kind of give you some more context with my letter. You know, again, we feel the economic impact here is significant, and we certainly don't want the board to, you know, miss out on the opportunity to be aware of this ahead of time. You know, weigh in if it feels appropriate, and you know, at least have all the facts before they break ground. And, you know, the development has already gone beyond, you know, any meaningful discussion. So again, if anyone has questions now or down the road, you know, we welcome that, and we appreciate everyone's time today.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. I think it's important for me to kind of remind everyone that in November the committee discussed this and decided that it, pardon me, it wasn't really in the domain, so to speak, of the county to weigh in on this. We felt we would defer to the city. So with that, let me open it up to any questions. Supervisor McDivitt and
First of all,
Supervisor
thank you,
McGowan.
Elizabeth, for attending. I appreciate it. I have a great deal of respect for people that take a chance on the city of Glens Falls and make an investment. And Nathan, was a great letter. I did read it a couple of times, and very well done. I'm going to be rather circumspect in terms of any comments as it relates to the specifics because the project is in litigation, and I'm going to defer to the Supreme Court. And but after that decision is made, I do have some thoughts and opinions, and I will make them at that time. So thank you.
Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, I did, Jack did speak up, and I remember precisely saying that I believe we should stand behind this. Thank you, Elizabeth, and I still believe that this needs to be moved forward. This is a particular area that really joins in with our economic growth and what the Miller Group can do for Glens Falls and our county. I do believe in, and you know, nothing against the mental health center. I do believe that that is also a great need in that area, but not in an industrial health zone. So I do agree with Mr. McDivitt, or Supervisor McDivitt, that when the litigation is over, I do believe that we should step up and help in the process of doing whatever we can to keep this in an industrial zone.
Supervisor
Appreciate
Sieber?
that. And just want to add, we concur fully that, we understand the need for housing, especially vulnerable populations. This isn't, about not providing them with opportunities in the community. It's purely, is this the right fit for it in the community, from both a development standpoint and, economic benefit of the whole, so.
Supervisor Sieber?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome.
As a new member to this committee, and at first blush, I'm inclined to agree with Supervisor McGowan. I, though, am not privy to, I believe, whatever letter you're referring to. I only know what I've read in the paper. Is it
Yeah,
on
it came
the...
through
Amanda sent it out.
Yesterday it came through?
Wednesday.
Wednesday. So I must have missed it when it came out. I was just looking for the attachments on the agenda. But would love to learn more about it, but I certainly recognize the concerns that have been brought up about Glens Falls and the different, the lack of so many different, not only resources, but economic drivers and trying to balance out, particularly within Ward 1. And so I think it is a relevant topic for the county to be looking at and discussing and learning more about. So whatever information you have that you can send my way that I apparently need to
If
look
you'd
at.
like to take a look at my letter, and then anything that you'd like, my email and contact information is in there, and I'd be
Okay, I'll
happy
send
to
that to you
provide
right
you
now.
with more.
Thank you.
Supervisor Bramer?
Thanks.
Welcome.
I do want to thank Ms. Miller for coming as well. It's important to have you here
Wednesday.
involved in this discussion of economic development as it relates to the county, because Miller Mechanical is important to especially the city and providing jobs for our workforce, and I do appreciate that. And in the vein of your comment earlier about going on a listening tour type thing, I would suggest or ask that you add Miller Mechanical to your list and that we check it out, if they're willing to have us.
I know Mr. Moore came for a tour of mechanical as well as the consumer. We've had the opportunity to grow our business because of development, economic development along. So the acquisition of the community, and our current facility in Washington, but we will be.
I'd encourage anybody to tour as I did. It was great. They're doing amazing things.
Any other comments? Mr. Supervisor Driscoll, you kind of gave me one of those looks. I thought you might have some passion along this subject. So do we have any action that we're prepared to take? Any further thoughts? So my sense is that we'll defer to the state or the Supreme Court action. We'll wait until that occurs and possibly bring it up again afterwards.
Okay. Well, we'll certainly keep you informed on how, if and when that resolves itself. And again, in the meantime, if any more information is sought by any chair committee members, we'd be happy to provide. Okay? Thank you. Appreciate the time again.
So, privilege of the floor. Seeing none, motion to adjourn.
Sure.
We are adjourned. Thank you.